3. Hey, welcome back everyone to Veteran Nation, and as always, you can always go onto www.nrnplus.com/VN. That's nrnplus.com/VN, all spelled out, and you can subscribe to our network here. It's $79.95 for the year, or you can pay $9.95 for the month. But by subscribing, you're going to get access to all the great independent contributors that we have here, as well as this show and all of the content that we have behind the paywall, all the secret stuff. So go ahead and subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, like us on Bumble, like us on Facebook. Also, feel free to join the Veteran Nation Facebook group where we talk about topics from the show and a lot of other stuff. But now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get into our show. And today I have Karl joining us. Karl, how you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. And Karl, you have recently written a book, and it's very special and unique. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the book?
Well, I'm a grandfather. I'm old. I, I, I wrote this book for my grandson after I lost my son in the Afghanistan conflict. My son, Trey, Senior Airman Trey Porfirio, he was shot in Afghanistan in 2009 3 times. And I don't know why he survived that day, but he did for some reason, crazy reason. He lived mostly in Walter Reed for the last year of his life, had many, many surgeries. They did a great job. The veterans did a great job, trying to save him and everything. I can't complain. When some people complain about the treatment they get, I always say, I can't complain. I know they did take good care of my son. But he left behind a son that was only 8 months old when he passed. And a few years after that, the book's been out now a little over 2 years, I guess. And a little after that, this book came to me. And it's funny because when I was younger, I always said, if I could write a book, I want to write a children's book. And I actually was a pediatric nurse way, way, way back. And I was a custodial single father. And so I said, hey, if I could ever write a book, I want to write a children's book. But then this is not the book I wanted to write at all. So, but it just sort of came to me like all at once. It just came to me that, children don't know about people like yourself, and thank you for your service. People, they need to know more, and they're not learning about what our military does, what our veterans does, what the price of their freedom is, that there's a cost that goes with that. And, in my opinion, it has to start as children. I started it with my children and, always explaining these things to my children. But everybody doesn't do that, or they think, oh, well, we don't want to talk about war. That's just an ugly thing, so let's not talk about it. But it's a necessary evil that we must talk about. So anyway, that's my opinion anyway. But I wrote this book. Here it is. Can you see it? My Daddy's Heart is Purple. And I wrote it mostly for my grandson. And it's a story about a grandfather, me, and I go by Nono. That's Italian for grandpa. And I go by Nono, and it's a story about Nono telling his grandson what a Purple Heart is. And because my grandson, in truth and reality, he doesn't know his father. He was 8 months old, so he's never met him. He doesn't know him. It's been a little complicated. I wasn't really allowed to speak of him, so that's people don't understand that. They just get all crazy when I tell them that. So, she just didn't want the baby's mother just did not want me to speak of my son to the baby.
Everyone's got to deal with their grief in their own ways.
And she didn't want to. It wasn't grief. I don't know. She's remarried, and he's a good guy. He's a very good guy. He's in the Army as well. And, but I can see it. It puts a lot of friction, the new husband versus the old husband versus the new daddies versus the old daddies versus the stepdaddies versus all that, and the his, hers, and ours children.
Very common thing in the military. So
yeah, very, and those things. So she's remarried, and that's the only father that my grandson knows. So then he just turned 11, and then it's like, wait a minute, if you're my grandfather, then what parent's father are you? Well, I'm not your mother's father and I'm not your father's father. Then whose father are you? Well, I'm your biological father's father. So, how do you explain that to a child?
Mhm.
And then they, what? And then comes the emotions and all that thing. What? I had another father and this is not my real father. And I said, yes, he is your real father. He's the only father you've known. This man is your real father, but it's still, who knows what goes through a child's head?
Yeah.
How they think. And, so then he didn't want to talk about my son, his father, because then it upset him too much, or
Mhm.
she put it in his head that it would upset him too much. So now we can't talk about it. So he would see my son's picture, which of course I have his pictures in the house, and he'd say, "Hey, who is that?" And I'd have to say, "A friend of mine." I wasn't allowed to say, "That's your father."
Okay.
So yeah, it's been kind of harrowing. I have to
Yeah.
go to therapy because of it. So it's like,
Hey,
um,
we all need therapy. I go as well. So
because I drive my kids. I would, you drive your friends and family crazy talking about things that you can't change, but that you want to constantly moan and gripe about, as I do. So I wish things. I mean, I've embraced her like a daughter, but it's just there's always going to be that who I am friction in there, and
yeah.
I get along well with her husband. And like I said, he's a good guy. And I tell him that all the time. He's a good guy. I said, I appreciate how much you love my grandson. And he thinks the world of you. That's his daddy. That's his daddy. And I think he doesn't want to think that he has two daddies. He just doesn't want to think about that. And
Yeah.
then to think of the thoughts, his father was shot by an enemy combatant. How does a child understand that? They don't,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, um, the children that understand it is the ones that do, the ones that come back home, missing an arm or a leg or in the wheelchair, then they're the ones that have to deal with that and understand that. But that wasn't, the case with my son since my grandson was only 8 months old. So, like I said, I wrote the book. Um, you can, you can get, it explains what a Purple Heart is, and that was my mission. My mission was to, people don't know, when you're a veteran, and some people don't even know what the word veteran means, and it
Mhm.
just blows you away. And then the active duty versus a retired person or a person that's now out of the military, and then all these medals. What are these medals? What is a Purple Heart? uh, I know there's people, I hate to say this, but I know there's people in the military that don't know what a Purple Heart is, or
Yeah.
how you get one. I know when my son was in the hospital at Walter Reed, which is an Army medical hospital, and even those people didn't understand, even though they were military, they didn't understand, the workings of it. And
The
what
military doesn't make it easy when they change the what it takes to rate certain things. So,
exactly. And the
it's
ribbons,
always a
I
work in
was
progress
having,
sometimes.
I have a lot of military friends, and I was trying to get someone, I did get my son's uniform. I did get that. And, I needed someone to explain all the ribbons. I don't understand, the citations he's gotten. I don't understand what every ribbon means on his uniform. And my son never, hey dad, I got a ribbon. Hey dad, I got a stripe. My son wasn't like that. He just wasn't
Yeah.
like that. And then after he got shot, and it was like world around news, because not because he got shot. And I have to explain this to people over and over. I go, no, my son's not special because he got shot or because he gave up his life. He had this surgery that nobody else had had, and
Mhm.
that's what kind of got all this publicity going. And I think, I don't know. I don't know if some other people resented it. One of the nurses said to me, "Man, I wish I would get that attention. Nobody ever pays it." And I said, "Well, go to Afghanistan, get your ass shot off, and you'll get, is that what you want to do to get the
Yeah.
attention?" My son was in horrible shape. He lost a lot of parts, and you know, would you want to go through that just so you could get a medal or a or a citation or something? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I
You know.
I was I listening to you talk, there's a lot of things I can definitely relate to because I was in Afghanistan a little bit after your son. My child was born while I was there. I was not there
Oh,
for his birth.
right.
So a lot of things that you're saying, definitely I can totally relate to and
Totally.
understand. Um, and what really about this whole situation of talking with you that really you know is a great thing is that it seems like this has really been a healing thing for you, that this is a process for you to take what you've been through and try to put some good back into the world.
We have to. What we have to. What choice do we have? I mean, people. I said I could have laid down. As a matter of fact, I said when my son passed, I said I'm going to become an alcoholic, and because and it's funny because now it's like I kind of lost my desire to drink. I wish I would get it back actually, but I kind of lost my desire to drink. Now I can't because I delved into food. Don't do that, people. Don't delve into food because Little Debbie became my best friend. And I would eat Little Debbie's until I gave myself diabetes, is which I did. So, now I've lost the weight and I'm kind of controlling it. But, now I hate that little tramp. So, it's like every time I see her, I just curse, that sweet little smile and that little stupid hat. And I go, you gave me diabetes. But of course she did. I did. Eating all those and that's people. People have their ways. They turn to drugs. They turn to alcohol.
Hmm.
They turn to promiscuous sex. They turn to all kinds of vices, suicide attempts, or just living a suicidal life, like swimming with sharks or doing something, you know, um, just very risque. And I decided that I would try to support my veterans the best I could, not let my son's memory die, because any parent you talk to, and this doesn't have anything to do with the military, but any parent that's ever lost a child, their number one fear is that everybody forgets their child, and they
Hmm.
do. When I go to my family's house, I'm always missing a child. They're not.
Yeah.
So and I know they loved him very much, and they'll bring him up once in a while, but it's like taboo. We won't talk about him because we know it'll upset Carl. Well, let's not talk about Trey. It'll upset him too much. So, and it's kind of the opposite, because you want somebody to ask you. And when you asked me the other day, I was quite honored. I said, no, I'd be honored, to come and talk about my son and talk about his sacrifice and talk about the things you've sacrificed and your service to our nation, because that's what people aren't getting or aren't appreciating, especially in this time we're having today. I mean, they're more worried about, um, getting called some stupid word. And I feel sorry. I'm not going to mention certain groups of people, but that you're called a word, that you're referred to as something, and you let your life fall apart over that. Let me tell you, when you're standing over your child that's in pieces, laying in a hospital bed, talk to me then. Talk
Yeah.
that then you can talk to me. But when you're saying your life is going to pieces because I won't pay your student loan off, or um, I called you an ugly name. What happened to sticks and stones? I always say, what happened to sticks and stones? That's what our teachers taught us. Now the teachers are sending the kids to therapy because somebody called them a name. It's horrible. And then I look at that. Are these our future? Are these our future soldiers? Are these our future military? Who are we? Could you imagine if you're in the military and you're out there being shot at, and somebody calls you a name, and oh my God, you throw your gun down and start to pout. I mean, and I mean, it's ridiculous.
I'll tell you, having lived through it, when you're in a bunker hiding from the rocket attacks, yeah, you don't care what someone calls you at that point. A lot of things that are important in your life suddenly become secondary, and you start thinking about the things that really matter. And dad to
Right.
dad, I can absolutely, I can empathize with everything you've gone through, because that's every parent's fear. Um, but I mean, I can also look at everything you're doing about this and say, that is something that that's the type of dad I want to be. And I think anyone watching would say that, you don't want your children to be forgotten. You want to scream their praises, from the mountaintops. So I think this book is a really good way to do that. It's also a really good way that I think, to help so many children out there who probably don't understand, what their parents are going through when mom or dad has been,
They don't.
under fire.
They don't. And I used to live in Kings Bay. I don't know if you're familiar with Kings Bay. It's a submarine base down at the southern tip of Georgia. And so, my son, he dated a daughter of a Navy officer, and everybody's connected down there. I felt I was the outcast. I felt like the outcast because I hadn't served, and I felt like the outcast. And so my son, he was very tall, and he said, Dad, and he was in the NJROTC. My boys were in the NJROTC, and I didn't force them. I just kind of guided them that way. But it was very good for them. Whether you go military or not, it's good for a kid, boy and girl. So he said, Dad, I can't join the Navy. I'm too tall. I keep hitting my head on the gangways. And I did notice a lot of the Navy guys were rather short. So, submarines kind of squishy. So this is terrible. This was selfish on my part, because when we were going to all, the Marines and the Coast Guard said, hey, we don't need any more guys in the Coast Guard. They didn't even want to talk. We don't need any more. We got people lined up for the Coast Guard. We don't need, so, then he said, let's go check out the Air Force. And I was like, thank you, God. I was just, oh, thank you. Because in my mind, they call it the chair force. They make and in my mind, he wasn't going to get shot at. I said, if he goes to the Air Force, he'll be safe. He'll be in some building, controlling something from behind the scenes. He'll be doing his job, but he'll be helping out, but he'll be safe. So what does my son do? A deployment comes up. I think he was supposed to go to Japan or something, and he swapped with the guy. He said, no. They said, how about Afghanistan? My son was a communications specialist. That's what he did.
Okay.
I would tease him and say, oh, you're going to be installing phones at the White House one day, son. That's what you're going to do. He could take apart a computer and put it back in just no time. I mean, they taught him all these skills, and at A school and all that good stuff. So he was really, he really enjoyed his job. He made Airman of the Year his second year in. I was just, it's just, Paul, I was just flabbergasted. I go, son, this is terrible of a dad. I go, son, are you sure someone's not playing a joke on you? Because, it was, and then he forwarded me the email that looked pretty official and was signed by an officer. And I said, and I wasn't trying to demean him or anything, but I mean, it's like he wasn't that, he wasn't all that gung-ho. And this was his second year in, but my son followed orders. He did what he was told. And if somebody said, you want to learn something, he was the first one to say, I'll do it. And that's why. And so when they said, who wants to go to Afghanistan? And of course, he's attached to an Army unit, because the Air Force unit in of themselves, my understanding is, doesn't go, as you would know, doesn't go. So he would be attached to a Marine or an Army unit or something like that. So that's what he was attached to, an Army unit. And his job was to keep the communications flowing. And as you yourself said, I don't know where you served. My son was in a combat outpost. He was in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so it was a miracle he made it to Bagram, and then he went to Reinstein. Am I saying that right? And then on to Walter Reed. And by God's mercy, somehow he made it there. And they tried their best to patch him up. And then he had this surgery, which is called islet cell transplant surgery. So if your viewers know anything about anatomy and physiology, your pancreas is a little tiny organ near the liver, about that big, like a banana pepper. But that little organ does a lot, and you can't live without that organ. And my son lost his in the shooting. So this doctor from Florida, he invented this process which extracted cells out of this little pancreas. So before they removed it, it was damaged. Before they had to remove it, they extracted these cells. He does something with these cells, some magic, and then they inject them into the liver, and the liver starts producing insulin. So my son was the first person, due to a trauma, had this islet cell transplant surgery. So it was on the ticker tape. My oldest son, his older brother, he was on a cruise ship, and he said working, and he said it came on the ticker tape across the, the international, the BBC internet. He said it was, across the, and I was getting phone calls from CNN, from all these people. Oh, we're gonna do a conference call with you and the doctors and blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I called my son up in Walter Reed. I'd go see him, but I'd call him and I said, son, people want to know your story. And he goes, I don't care, Dad. I don't want to talk. And I said, people want to hear your story. The news people are coming to you. So one of the Fox affiliates went up there and talked to him. And then first they said they were only going to say an airman or a veteran. But then they decided, no, let's get that name out there. So that's how it kind of snowballed. And then everybody wanted to be his best friend. The cameras were rolling, and it's like everybody wanted to be his best friend. And he wasn't used to all that attention and hoopla and everything. And he's in the middle of the Reader's Digest. They did this story called Saving Trey. He's in the centerfold of the 2010 August Reader's Digest, whatever. And of course, it's a Reader's Digest. So the very dramatic story. I mean, some of it was true, but some of it was the drama. And, they just started printing all that stuff. And then, would you like me to tell you about meeting Joe Biden?
Sure.
So, I'm not a supporter. I will tell all your viewers that I do not support Joe Biden, nor Barack Obama. So, but Joe was, and Jill, I got to kind of be bitter when I say her name. They came on Christmas Day. My son was shot near Thanksgiving. And so I went back on Christmas to be with him on Christmas, and he hadn't gotten out of bed yet. And I said, my Christmas present, son, you're going to get out of bed. You're going to get up for me. And he said, Dad, if you'll go get me a wheelchair, I'll get up. I mean, he could walk, but he was just shaky. He was on shaky ground. And his voice was like real raspy, because he had been intubated for a long time. And so he didn't have much of a voice. He was in a lot of pain. He wasn't much to talk much. And so Joe Biden and Jill came to Walter Reed to the cafeteria to sling mashed potatoes. Joe was slinging mashed potatoes because he said he appreciated, because they're the ones that did his brain surgery. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that Joe did have brain surgery. He had an aneurysm, I believe, repaired, and Walter Reed fixed it because he's a veteran. And so he sits down at the table. He sees my son. They come over. My son wasn't in the mood to talk. His fiance was there. She was with child. He wasn't born yet. And I'm sitting there, and Joe comes over, and he could tell my son was, so he sits down with me, knee to knee with me, and starts talking. And he's very, I talk with my hands. I'm bad, but it's just like you see Joe on TV. And now this was 10 years ago, so he was younger and much more animated, and whatever comes out of his mouth comes out of his mouth. And he had no filter. So he comes over, he sits down knee to knee, and he looks at my son, and so he's talking to my son through me, basically. And then he goes to tell me about his brain surgery, and he's using his finger, and he goes, yeah, they took my head off right here. They cut me open, and they did all this stuff. And he's just describing his surgery to me and why he loved Walter Reed, which is a good thing. And I thought it was very noble of him, to spend his Christmas. Miss Jill didn't seem too thrilled to be there, but, she had to. She was VP's wife. And, of course, Mr. Obama was off to Hawaii with his kids. And, so, and it's because then Joe got called away because of the underwear bomber. You remember the underwear bomber?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was then. I think he got called away for that. But so he leans over and he grabs me right above the knee and on the thigh. He grabs my thigh. I was wearing pants. And he grabs my thigh, and, he says, now, if you need anything, you just call me. And that's no bullshit. And I said, yeah, okay, sure, okay. And he grabbed the Christmas, there was like Christmas cards on the table. And as you know, the military, they don't put a lot out for decorations or spend a lot of money. They didn't spend a lot of money, but they did have it nicely decorated. And there was a Christmas tree. I was impressed that there was a Christmas tree in Walter Reed. So he grabs the Christmas card and he flips it over and he pulls his pen out and and he starts, and he goes, and sees his wife. She's like circumventing, the cafeteria, and he kind of snaps at her, like, honey, honey. He goes, honey, honey, what's my number over there? Meaning over there, I guess at the White, I don't know, over wherever his office is. And she says, I don't know. And boy, I thought, man, I started to jump up and say, that's the vice president. You can't talk to him like that. What the hell? She just kind of, and I thought it just really soured me on her, the way so he turned to the guy that was standing 20 feet behind, he was being unintrusive, taking pictures. And, he called him over and said, what's my phone number over there? And of course, he gave the phone number. Little did I realize it's the phone number that anybody can call. If you look it up, you can call the White House, you can call the president, you can call the vice president. People don't realize that, but you can call everybody. You can call, Skank Pelosi, you can call whoever you want to call. And of course, you're going to get somebody else and or voicemail. So I tried the number. I got somebody else. She said, why are you calling? I said, well, Joe said if I needed anything, he would be sure to provide that. Well, we can't do that, she said. And I go, why not? He said you could. And, so it was just a big joke. So that's the story I tell. Yes, I've been groped by Joe Biden. I have been touched by Joe Biden. So that's my claim to fame, if you want to call it that, whatever. Yes. And one more quick story. I'm talking a lot.
Sure. No, go right ahead.
I was not a Barack Obama fan either, neither was my son. So he's in the hospital, and he would, I think he was like on the 7th floor, I can't remember, and he would come down to the cafeteria or the what do you call it, the BX? Mm-hmm. I guess they had a little shop in there. He would come down and he would drink mostly milkshakes because he was very wounded in the inner parts and lost a lot of organs and part of his stomach, part of his so he would drink milkshakes because he said eating just was a pain for him. And he had to take enzymes every time he ate because the pancreas also produces enzymes. So he's going down in the elevator to get his milkshake, and he says the elevator stops. Halfway down, he says the elevator stops. And he says the door's open. He says, and there stood Barack Obama. And I said, well, son, did you jump out and shake his hand? He goes, no, I'll let the doors close. And that's the only thing, I can remember that story, and it puts a smile on my face every time I can still hear him saying, no, I let the doors close. And I just started laughing like you, and I said, you did. I said, he is the president after all. And he said, I don't care. And so he just continued on down. Because, when you're Walter Reed, you're already checked out. So they don't have to, and he did coin former President Bush. I know you know what coining is. You're going to have to explain to your audience what coining is. So my son had his little communication. They were called the communication nerds out of Wright-Patterson. And it looked like a little nerd with little hair and glasses was on his coin. And 88th Communication Squadron is what he was. And so he was selected to meet George Bush. George Bush came to Wright-Patterson. So since he was the hero of the day, my son he was selected to meet George Bush. So as he's meeting George Bush and they're introducing him, and there's still like a little half wall between them because it was the initial, and he reaches over and he has this coin. He calls me, he goes, Dad, I coined George Bush. And I go, oh my God, what did he say? And he said, he laughed. But the look on the Secret Service's face they did not know what was in my son's hand when he did that. That was my son. He was a smart ass. I don't know how he got away with it, but he said Bush just laughed. And then later, they took pictures together, which I took them down off my Twitter. That used to be my background picture of him shaking George Bush's hand. And I had to take it down after the way he did and would not support Trump and would not support our party. I had to take it down. It hurt me. It hurt me so greatly because my son said, Dad, you're going to be so jealous. I get to meet George Bush. And he got me an autographed copy of his book, and I still sitting there on the shelf. I think I'll sell it to the highest bidder. I don't know if anybody wants it, but so I'm rambling, but that's my story. And let me show you. There's my son. Well, there's glare. Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
There's kind of some glare. That's his graduation picture, 18 years old, and this is his son, my grandson. So that's Landon. Who's now 11, and So that's my
Well,
story.
I think I think you're doing a really good thing because you're keeping your son's memory alive,
Thank
and
you.
you're healing what you went through, and I think you're also doing something positive for not just young kids like your grandson, but for many out there. I can see where this book would absolutely be helpful for
And
many families who are struggling through a lot of stuff.
it's not just about my son. It's about you. It's about people like you. It's about all the veterans, past, present. None of them should be forgotten. None of them. And here they just put out another holiday, just Juneteenth and everything, which I'm not against it. It's just really, I mean, look at, yes, we have a Veterans Day, but they gave their lives. These are people that served, and even the ones that, like yourself, that didn't. You still need to be honored that you gave your service, that you did. You could have been shot just as well. You could have lost your life just as well. You're out there on the line, and defending the country. And these young people sit here and gripe. They just don't have a comprehension of what freedom is. I keep saying, let's take away all their cell phones for 3 days. If I wish the internet would go down for 3 days, so these kids and grown-ups could see. Oh my God! Could you imagine 3 days? 3 days without Facebook, 3 days without
I
Instagram, three
think
days without their. They
that
would
could
go
be,
nuts.
yeah, you could probably see some
You want to talk
families
about
really destroying each other.
you want to talk about an insurrection? That would be an insurrection. I mean, they would go absolutely bonkers. Do you agree? I mean, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle it. I mean, I see these kids. The internet goes down for an hour and they go nuts. There's a hurricane, there's a tornado, and the internet goes down and they go nuts. And it's like, this is not a given, and your freedom is not a given. Just like that. That's why that's my analogy. I have to put it to a kid about their cell phone. I'm like, it's not a given that cell phone's always going to work, that satellite's always going to be up there in outer space, because they don't realize that it's a satellite beaming down, a signal to their cell phone, and they just don't get it. They don't
Mhm.
want to get it, and it's sad because they need to get it and need to stop whining about such stupid little things, and appreciating their parents. And I didn't see that enough even when I lived down on the base. The kids took it for granted that their parents served. To them, it was their parents' job,
Mhm.
but I felt like they took for granted what their parents did, and I
Well,
just felt like they could have been a little more patriotic.
those who are experiencing, like what your son experienced, I think this book will help those children to realize that, what their parents do is definitely something special. Um, where can people who are watching the show, where can they get your book?
Well, just My Daddy's Heart is Purple. It's on Amazon. I've seen it on eBay. It's on Barnes and Noble. Just type in My
You
Daddy's Heart is
self-published it?
Purple if they can remember that. And it'll come up. It'll come up. If you put in my name, Porfirio, which is backwards as I fear I'm poor. But if you just type in Trey, I've learned you can type in TRE. My son was Trey, space P, and things will come up. It's just
Okay.
amazing. He was at that time he was like a keyword on Google. I couldn't believe it. If I'm saying that the right way, the
We'll
nurse
do
couldn't even
our
believe it.
to do
Pardon?
put the links in the description of this video wherever you're watching our show today. We're gonna do our best to make sure that we have all the links down below. Uh, do you have any social media or anywhere
I
else where people can reach out to
I
you?
do Twitter. I do Twitter, and I
Okay.
encourage people to stay on Twitter. A lot of them said, "Oh, when they kicked Trump off," and I said, "No," and so many, and I lost thousands of followers and everything. And then Twitter does their little purge. I'm shadow banned half the time. One time I tagged at Jack and I put, Jack, what are you afraid? Why are you afraid of a gold star father? What are my words that scare you so much that I could say that could hurt millionaire, billionaire Jack Dorsey? What is it that I'm saying and doing that could possibly hurt? And I said, do you have a thing against veterans, against Gold Star families, against, and then I got unshadow banned for just a little while. So I don't know if it was because one of his goons responded to that. What? You better watch it, Mr. Dorsey. You're saying ugly things about Gold Star families or whatever. And I am at Dad and Me at DADNME 88
Okay.
on Twitter. At Dad and Me 88. That's my Twitter handle, and I'm Gold Star Dad. So if you put in Gold Star Dad, I'm Gold Star Dad on Twitter. So I think I'm on Parler. I'm on a few other things, but I mainly do Twitter to promote your shows, to promote people like yourself, the other veterans, Coda vets,
Hmm.
things, you know, to help our
Positive things.
veterans. So,
Yeah.
some people save whales, some people save trees. I say save a veteran, whatever. My son, Damien, is working on a movie called Pray They Stand Down, acronym PTSD, Pray They Stand Down, you know, to help. And then COVID hit. And even people wouldn't realize this, but even in the movie business, you had to wear masks. You had to it was really hard to get people together in a group to do a movie. So he's still working on that.
Okay.
It'll be a fantastic movie when it comes out. But
Well, when it
that's
comes
kind of what
out,
he does.
have them reach out to us,
I
and
will
have them on.
absolutely,
That's
absolutely. And again, I thank you for your service. I thank you for having me on to be able to talk about my beautiful son. Um, I encourage people, just Google Trey. I hate to say that. We turned Google into a word. What can we use a word to replace Google? Just to say look up, like we used
search.
to in the old
Yeah.
days. The teacher would say in my day, go look it up. That meant go get the dictionary and go look it up. So I'll say, go look it up. Go look up my son's name, Trey Porfirio, Senior Airman Trey Porfirio. Just and read his story. It's pretty fascinating. I can't even Google my name. I used to check, when I was in real estate and things, check what was going on, what people were saying about me, and I couldn't because it would always take me to his stories, and I would see pictures on the internet that I didn't know existed,
Mm.
and I would just cry and cry, and I just, there's still things out there that I don't even know exist. Pictures of him, interviews where they interviewed him in Ohio, where his base was, and things like that. He was supposed to go on Good Morning America, and then the Haiti earthquake hit, so he got canceled. He got canceled when they were
Well,
calling me actually, going, oh, we want your
like the
son to come to
cancer.
Good Morning America. Pardon?
That's but thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing about your story, the sacrifice your family's made, and for telling us about your son. And again, thank you for this book. I think you're going to help a lot of families out there with it. And
I hope so. One more thing. I got to read
yeah.
it. I was so honored last year. First, when I was a kid, we got off of Veterans Day. That was a day off of school. So
Mhm.
see, and I was a little angered when I heard that the kids had to go to school on Veterans Day. But I had to rescind that because where I live in a more patriotic place. I'm in Marjorie Taylor Greene's, so I'm one of her constituents, and I just met her. I just went to Washington D.C. and I actually just met her and got a. She just sent me a autograph picture yesterday. I got it in the mail. She's a great lady. For those of you that don't support her, please do, because think what's running up against her. So if you're on the right, please support her. Uh, she and Trump are good friends, and they're on the same team. So I say please support her. But I was going somewhere with this, and I forgot where I was
Go
going.
right
I
ahead.
said, "Oh, I got to read on Veterans Day at school." So the local school principal, because I donated the book to the local library,
Hmm.
and they put it in the paper and everything. They made a really nice big deal out of it, and so I found out that the library really supports our veterans, and I'm living in a very patriotic town, so I was very proud of that. And so the school principal called me up, seeing she saw the newspaper and the book, and she said, would you come on Veterans Day and read your book to our children? So I was so honored to go on Veterans Day, 600 children, a group of 300 and another group of 300. And I got to read the book, and the kids were so attentive and asked questions. And it was wonderful.
Great.
It was wonderful to wake these little children up, and, like one of the kids said, did you cry? And things like that, but, it's funny when it comes from a kid, but it's a horrible thing, but it's reality. It's reality. And I have an uncle, my uncle's a Marine, my uncle's in the Navy, my auntie's in the Air Force, and things like that. So, there are, the kids were very learned about it. and it was a great thing. It was a great honor for me to be able to do that.
That's
So a lot of people have got the book. Like I said, a lot of Patriot support. I thought nobody would see my book except my grandson and my relatives. I think I made my mother buy it. I think I didn't give it to her. I think I made her actually buy it. I go, no, you got to buy the book so I get, credit, a little check mark. It does have 5 stars on Amazon, if I have to brag.
excellent.
But it would help children. It really would. And I wish it would be in every children elementary school. I don't know if your children are that young. Are your children that young yet?
I have an
But
11-year-old.
oh well, I wish it was in elementary school so every child could read it. It takes 5 minutes to read it. It's a short book. And it explains that George Washington. I didn't even know that. I had to do my research. General George Washington made this. That's how old the Purple Heart is. He made the Purple Heart because he felt that the soldiers needed something to honor them back. So he came up with the Purple Heart. So there's something that your viewers now just learned. So, because I had to research that.
Well,
so thank you again very much.
I think a lot of people are going to be helped by this. I hope it's not your only book. I hope to see more from you. And if you do write more, come on back because we'll want to talk to you, and we'll put a link so that people can go out and find your book. And thank you again so much for joining us today. This has been a great discussion. I
thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And please, people, don't forget your veterans. Please don't forget your veterans. There's a lot of causes out there, but let's remember those veterans.
This show is dedicated to helping all those veterans out there. And for those of you watching, if you want to support our show here, you like what we do, again, you can always go to www.nrnplus.com/VN. You can subscribe to the show, subscribe to the network, and support all the content creators that we have here. Again, it's $79.95 for the year, $9.95 for the month. And for all of you out there, thank you for being worth serving.